Hey guys, Andrew Hyder here at Vance Outdoors, and today we have something really cool and unique for you. So the Walther PDP has been out since the beginning of this year, and we are gonna do an EDC build. So we're gonna go into the range, we're gonna shoot the gun in the stock format, and then we're gonna build it into the ultimate daily carry gun. We're gonna put Walther's factory dynamic trigger in it, we're gonna put their optic mount on it, we're gonna put their co-witness sights on it, we're gonna put a red dot on it, and then we're gonna go back in the range and see how awesome this gun really becomes with a few upgrades. Stay tuned. All right guys, so we're in the Vance Outdoors range here at Obet's, and we're gonna shoot this stock out of the box 4-inch PDP. We got 10 rounds of 9mm here. We're just gonna see how the gun shoots accuracy-wise and feels at about 7 yards. So we're gonna shoot this, and then we're gonna head back into the training room, and we're gonna do a bunch of upgrades to it. The sights are a little hard to read indoors, but that's one of the upgrades that we're gonna do. It's 3-dot sights and it kind of blends in a little bit, especially with a white target. Overall, the gun shoots really good. I'm gonna put 10 more rounds through it on a separate target and just kind of just put a few more rounds through it, just functionality-wise. That group was a lot better once I got a little better idea of what the gun was doing behind the sights. So shoots really good out of the box. We're gonna head in now, do some upgrades. Stay tuned. All right guys, so we're back in the classroom here at the Obet's location, and we're gonna start the process of building this into the ultimate EDC gun. So we're gonna start off with the slide. We're gonna put Walther's backup co-witness sights on it. We're gonna mount the optic plate, and we're gonna put a Ride-On X3 Tactics red dot on it. All right, so with the firearm confirmed it is unloaded, no magazine in the mag well, no round in the chamber, we're going to drop the slide on the firearm, point the gun in a safe direction, pull the trigger. We're gonna pull the slide just out of battery, pull the takedown lever down, release the slide, and pull it off the front of the frame. We're gonna set the frame aside because we don't need it right now. Next thing we're gonna do is pull the guide rod out. So with the guide rod facing the muzzle, you're just gonna take your thumb and push it forward ever so slightly and lift it up, pull it out, and set it to the side. The barrel removal is very simple. Literally grab it by the locking lug on the bottom of the barrel, lift it straight up and out. Set it off to the side because we won't need it for right now. The next step we're gonna use is a Glock front sight tool. The Walther PDP is cut for aftermarket Glock sights. So, Glock front sight tool. In the front of the slide, you are going to see a bolt underneath. All we're going to do is use that wrench, unscrew the bolt, push it through, hang on to the front sight as we do that. Set your slide down. And that is the front sight removal on the Walther PDP. I'm gonna put the bolt back in it for future use if I ever decide to put it back on the gun. Set that aside. This is gonna be the other little tricky part. So what I have here is we have a bench vise, I have a piece of leather that I got from my local craft store. I'm gonna set the slide in the vise, just enough to hold the side of it, and I'm gonna tighten it up. not gonna squeeze it really tight, just enough to really hold the slide in there as I'm going to remove the rear sight. The sight body on the factory sight is polymer. So I'm just going to take a hammer that's got a Delrin block on one end, brass block on the other. Comes in a Wheeler kit that you can find at our retail location. I'm gonna take a Wheeler brass punch, and all I'm going to do is drive the rear sight out in the direction that the round would be ejected out of the pistol, which is from left to right. The backup set from Walther is, this set is specifically cut for an RMR because we are putting an RMR footprint optic on the PDP. So it's gonna come with the front sight screw, Allen key, and serrated rear sight for lower third co-witness. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna make sure that that set screw is backed out of the bottom of the sight. We're going to set the sight in the rear dovetail and line it up the best we can with our fingers. Then what I'm going to do is take a Delrin block and that same hammer, and I'm going to install that sight until it's basically flush with the side of the slide. At that point, then what I'm going to do is take a brass punch from the side, and I'm going to align it in the middle of the dovetail. Hang on to your slide, loosen tension on your vise, and that is the rear sight insulation on the Walther PDP. The front sight is just the exact opposite of taking the factory one off. It has the bolt on the bottom. We're just gonna unscrew that. Once you have the bolt out, I leave it sit in the tool and set the tool upright. Set your front sight in the slide, and then I'm going to put a dab of medium strength Loctite on that screw. Hold the sight down, flip the slide over so you can see, and all you're gonna do is then reinstall that bolt. Once it's snug, little extra turn for torque. That's front sight insulation on the Walther PDP. So now that we have the aftermarket or the factory replacement Walther lower third co-witness sights, there's a set screw on the rear sight. So the rear sight, it comes supplied with the correct Allen key. So we're gonna take that set screw out. Again, I'm just gonna apply a little bit of medium strength Loctite to that. Put that back in the gun, or back in the slide. Set that there. You don't have to really crank on these. The Loctite will hold it in place. So once you get it set, wherever it's snug, I typically go about 1/8 of a turn and then call it good. So now that we have the iron sights on, we're gonna take a T10 Torx bit, and we're gonna remove the optic plate on the slide. So it's just held in place with 2 screws, 2 bolts, I should say. So I'm just gonna loosen them up, and the optic cover plate comes off. You do need both of the screws because you're going to reuse them with the factory Walther plate. So we're just gonna set that plate onto the slide. We're gonna use a little Loctite again. So, little dab, not a lot because it's actually going in the slide. And then I'm just gonna start this one and just barely snug it up until I get the other one started. Same thing, just gonna apply a little bit of Loctite. Set that in this cavity. So some guys will torque these. I'm not a fan of doing that because sometimes with the Loctite and the gun getting hot and cold, they will actually seize in the slide. So I'll go snug, and then just a little bit past that, the Loctite will be more than enough to hold it in place. If there's any residual Loctite behind it all, just take a Q-tip or towel, wipe it off. And at that point then we have installed the factory Walther optic plate. Now we are going to put a Ride-On X3 Tactics red dot. Comes encapsulated. I'm just gonna drop that right on that optic plate. Take the 2 factory mounting hardware bolts that come with it. I do not run Loctite on my optic screws. In case you do need to get it off in a hurry, you're not trying to add heat to the actual optic body itself. So same thing, snug, and then I will actually put a little bit more pressure on these. And there you have it. We have now installed a Ride-On X3 Tactics red dot on the Walther PDP. All right, so now that we have the slide done, well, we're gonna let the Loctite dry for just a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and install the factory Walther dynamic trigger. So the firearms field stripped, and so I like to use a roll of tape, like packing tape. It's great for taking the slide stop out and the trigger pin. They are one of the same. You're not gonna hurt the side of the pistol at all. It is soft enough, but it's also rigid enough that it allows you to actually put some pressure on the gun. So the gun facing left side down, this is your slide lock / trigger pin. So we're gonna lay that over the open cavity of the tape, okay? And then I'm going to take a punch and center it over that pin. And then all I'm going to do is a few taps. And just like that, the trigger pin / slide lock pop out the left side of the receiver. I'm just gonna pull this out for the time being and set that aside. When you pull the punch out, the other side slide lock, because it is ambidextrous, comes out of the frame. Set that down for right now. There's 2 roll pins in the frame. I'm gonna use a 3/32 roll pin punch to drive them out. They can go out either direction. Since I have the frame on the left side, I'm just gonna go ahead and drive them out that way. So I'm gonna do the front first. What that pin is it actually holds the front slide rails and barrel locking block in place. So that pin pops out. At the same time, slide lock lever pops off. And there's a pin that holds the locking plug and spring in place. We're going to set those off to the side for right now. There's one more pin in the back of the pistol. We're just gonna maneuver the frame onto that roll of tape. This one is not nearly as hard to get out. Rear roll pin. Okay, the front frame rails / locking block, it can be a little tricky to get out. So we're gonna see if I can't do this here. I had a little trick the last time. There we go. It's just gonna pop out of the top of the frame. When you do this, the slide lock spring can come out. So just be careful. I'm not gonna take it out, I'm gonna leave it in the frame, but that is where the slide lock spring is. So now that we have those out, from the back of the frame, you have your sear cage and your trigger bar, and they pull right out of the frame. It's all encapsulated in one piece. We just separated it for the view. And now we're going to install the factory Walther dynamic trigger. It does come with a new sear cage, and it comes with an installed aluminum trigger shoe that is flat with aluminum trigger shoe safety. So You're going to take the back of the trigger bar, and there's a tab that hooks inside the spring. And so all you're going to do is align them inside, if I can see it, just like so. So now that we have the trigger bar inserted into the sear cage, we're going to drop the trigger shoe into the frame first, and then the sear cage drops in the back. I'm going to put the rear roll pin in first to hold the sear cage in place. The hammer, I'm going to use the Delrin side of the hammer until it's close to flush. I'll use my roll punch pin to finish it. I'm going to put locking block back in place. Side note, we're going to put the slide lock spring back in. The locking block captures the slide lock spring. Push that straight down. Take the front roll pin. We're going to drive it back in. For this, I'm going to actually set the pistol, the frame, flat on the table. Take my roll pin punch so it's flush. Now comes the slightly tricky part, is getting the slide lock slash trigger pin back in and mated with the other side. So we're gonna start by, you're gonna have to take the trigger shoe itself and move it to where it aligns in the frame, and then you can start the slide lock slash trigger pin install. Sometimes you have to give it a little tap to get it started. Let's see here. The spring sits on top of that shoulder. So the trick that I have found is to lay the gun flat, take a small punch, push up on the spring, and that allows you to get the spring on top of the shoulder before you would insert the slide lock trigger pin through the other side. There is a tab on the top of the right side slide lock, and that has to roll into the frame. So the trigger pin has to be flush with the cavity. Slide lock rotates in, held in place. Make sure you'll hear a little click, and then you're gonna tap it from the other side to reinsert the two pieces together. So then now what we have to do is reinstall the slide lock itself, the pin that holds it in place through the frame, and the takedown lever itself. It should not be this difficult. And now we have successfully installed the factory Walther dynamic trigger and the Walther PDP. Okay, so now we have aftermarket iron sights installed, red dot installed with an optic plate, and the Walther dynamic trigger. We're gonna re-oil the gun since we had it apart. We're gonna put it back together, reassemble, and then we're gonna head into the range and do some shooting. So for oil, I'm just gonna run a bead of oil on both slide rails. I'm gonna put a drop of oil in the top where the top of the chamber rides on the inside of the slide at unlock. I'm gonna put oil on the frame rails themselves. Put a little dab of oil on the new sear on the side of the slide rails. I'm gonna put some oil on the top of the chamber, put some around the muzzle of the barrel, and then all I'm just gonna do is use my 2 fingers and coat that section. Reassembly is just the exact opposite as disassembly. Take the slide, muzzle side first through the muzzle port, slide it in, drop it down, push it back, it will lock into place. Guide rod has 2 sides. The small side goes through the muzzle side of the slide. Once you have that set in place, take your thumb, push it forward, and it locks into place in the cavity on the bottom of the slide, or the bottom of the barrel. Once you have that done, grab your frame, grab your slide. We're gonna mate them together. Slide rails through the front. Locks in place. You wanna make sure that your slide lock actually pops up all the way once you put the gun back together. And we have successfully put together the ultimate everyday carry package, Walther PDP. All right, guys, so thanks for tuning in. So we did a Walther PDP EDC build today. So we did an optic plate, we did an optic, we did iron sights, we did the dynamic trigger, great little package. Wait, where's the gun? Awesome little package from Walther. Stop by Vance Outdoors, check them out. We have everything in stock, optics, triggers, sights. We'll get you taken care of.